muted, sorry. Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the HBCU Center Research Network Conference. We've had a great day thus far, wonderful, wonderful sessions around important topics that are critical to this year's theme, which is evidence, power, and democracy, and how HBCUs advance policy through research. And so again, I'm really, really pleased everyone is here to join us. This session is particularly exciting. Today, we started the conference with a session gathering of sister scholars. We have a program in the HBCU Center called the Sister Scholar Circle. And in those convenings, we gather together to talk about issues of importance to Black women and others in the academy and what it means to be a Black woman and a researcher and a scholar and all the other roles that we play. And so that was important for us to talk about as it relates to certainly research, what it means in terms of evidence, data, all the kinds of things that we're talking about today in this conference. This session that focuses on Black males is certainly equally as important. I'm really, really excited about the conversation that will emerge from it. I'm pleased to be joined by my colleague, Dr. Calvin Hadley, who is Assistant Provost for, what is the title? What is your title, Dr. Hadley? Assistant Provost for Partnerships and Student Engagement?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
He does important work, and I've been impressed for many, many years with his work on Black males, because even though, I mean, certainly that's been in the atmosphere in terms of this conversation about what do we do to better support Black males in higher education, and specifically at HBCUs, Dr. Hadley has really turned those words into action. And so I'm so impressed with the work he's doing here at Howard around supporting Black males as they matriculate through the university, attracting them to the university, and certainly making sure that they graduate. And so this session titled Power, Persistence, and Possibility, Reimagining Black Male Success at HBCUs is certainly fitting for today's conference, and just a very important conversation for us in our HBCU ecosystem and beyond. And so I'm going to turn the session over to Dr. Hadley, and he will introduce the other panelists and talk about the work they're doing here at Howard and why this topic, this work is so critically important to us. All right. Thank you, Dr. Hadley.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Carter. And greetings to the participants and greetings to my fellow panelists. And Dr. Carter, I want to say thank you before you head off of here for having this conversation. I think it's really important to elevate this work. It's a really critical time. I'm really, really honored to be a part of this conversation at your conference here. So thank you guys for convening this. And so we'll dive right into it. Panelists, really excited to have you guys here. I work with each of you in different capacities, and I know you well. But instead of tripping over your long resumes, I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves to the audience before we get started. We'll start with Dr. Bratton.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. J. Elijah Bratton. I'm the Assistant Director of Academic and Student Affairs here in the College of Arts and Sciences at Howard University.
Thank you, Dr. Bratton. Dr. Palmer.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Robert Palmer. I currently serve as Department Chair for Education, Leadership, and Policy Studies. I'm also a professor in the department as well. So happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. And last but not least, Mr. Gabriel.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick Gabriel. I am the program coordinator for the Howard University School of Business You Lead Male Initiative.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, guys. As you guys can see in the audience, we have a unique team assembled here that I think really touches Black male development on HBCU campuses from a number of different lenses. And I'm excited to dive deeper into those spaces here and get some diversity of thought as we think about the contemporary landscape and what the future looks like for Black male development at HBCUs and really beyond. You know, as we get started, I think it's important to kind of set the scene. In 2024, a piece of research came out from the American Institute for Boys and Men that said that 26% of HBCUs globally or nationally now consist of the average male population at HBCUs is now 26%, which according to that study had fallen precipitously from around 33% in 1976. They also note in that American Institute for Boys and Men study that the percentage of Black males on campus at about 26% is similar to the percentage of non-Black students at HBCUs. For comparison, we see this as an issue at HBCUs, but when you zoom out, the data doesn't really jump much at PWIs either. So what we're seeing is nationally, not as many males, not as many Black males are being involved in the higher education landscape. I think frequently we address this conversation from a deficit perspective, and so I'm really excited that today we get an opportunity to, as the title says, reimagine Black male success at HBCUs. So I'm going to start off with the global question, and then I have some questions for each of you individually, and then audience, please do as you are listening. Please feel free to submit your questions now, and we will certainly incorporate them into our conversation as well. So the first broad conversation is more of an institutional analysis. HBCUs occupy a unique position. Institutions built on Black excellence, yet operating within a broader system that has historically under-resourced and undervalued them. How does this tension shape the way we approach Black male student success today? And you guys can feel free to answer that in whatever order seems best for you guys.
I'll go first. When you consider that a lot of the students that are coming into school are first-gen students, their parents necessarily didn't have the experience of going through higher ed, navigating the system from filling out your FAFSA to registering to picking the right school to get all of that is foreign to our young men when they come in. And finding the making less complicated systems would certainly be helpful, but we all know as administrators that sometimes is easier said than done. So the direct approach of coaching the guys through the process is what I found to work best.
Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead, Dr. Palmer.
Well, I would add to that to talk about how the tension in terms of how HBCUs tend to lack support, particularly financial support, has created a dynamic in which HBCUs are not able to. There's some challenges in being able to provide some support, more support that Black males might need, for example, in terms of helping them transition into college and helping them prepare for the college process, for example. I think those are some issues that given those dynamics that HBCUs have to kind of, be more intentional to work on.
Absolutely. I think adding to that, my initial thoughts immediately go to, what actually has to be disaggregated in order to really target populations that are needing resources. So when we talk about HBCUs, right, we understand that HBCUs are not a monolith. All of us know that. But that also matters in the conversation because what a public land grant is doing versus a small private HBCU, like those are two different scenarios. And so I think in order to even approach the conversation, we've got to disaggregate this just a little bit. And then also while we are disaggregating, Black, right? Because we understand that Black is not a monolith either. So when we're talking about Black males coming to HBCUs, that's such a very broad conversation to where if we really want to understand where some of the challenges may lie or where some of the solutions are, it would require, I believe, just a very targeted and specific conversation. Are we talking about first gen Black males? Are we talking about international students? Are we talking about Black males from rural communities? So disaggregating HBCUs and disaggregating Blackness is important for framing it, and then also the reality of what it is to be broad access institutions versus academically selective institutions. All of that goes into play, I think, when approaching this conversation about the tension and some of the challenges that we face with Black male success.
So I appreciate that. I like to build off of that a bit and talk a little bit about assessment and data, right? I think you kind of talk about the importance of data and really the importance of understanding the demographic before we even dive into the conversation. So assessment and data both matter, but whose data and who is measuring it? How should HBCUs be thinking about what they track and how they define student success beyond graduation rate? So this dives into what a little bit of you're talking about, Dr. Bratton, but I think it goes beyond that, right? How do we define what success is for this population? What data should we be looking for? Where do we get that data? And I want to give a big shout out to Dr. Carter and her HBCU Center, because I think we'll find that a lot of that data will probably need to come from that space. But give us a little bit of guidance on whose data, where's the data, what matters, and what does success look like?
Yeah, I love the data question. I want to shout out I'm a proud product of the Higher Education Leadership and Policy Studies program here at Howard University. I am a PhD son of that program, and data is something that for me I think is an important shaper of the conversation because once again, every institution's mission, the institutional mission, really should be the marker of what success looks like. And so I believe every institution must gather that data both qualitatively and quantitatively. They must pull from multiple streams and sit with their student populations, with their current students, with their alumni, and through through conversations, through surveys, through every means possible, because I believe this is a topic that is so important, but for every institution, it may look different. And so I believe that's where the data begins. It begins with the stakeholders of that institution, and it begins with understanding the mission and the vision of the institution, the strategic plans of the institution, and that's how we begin to measure success through using data.
I want to add to that in terms of talking about various data points. I mean, obviously, graduation or retention or persistence is a key marker. But outside of that, I think there are other factors that we can look at to really understand the ways in which HBCUs are having success or helping to facilitate success for Black men. One variable, one fact that we can look at is the non-cognitive factors of variables and seeing how HBCUs have been able to impact students from a non-cognitive perspective. But another factor that we can look at is to see or understand the value-added component of a HBCU education. In other words, look at students, how students were academically and socially prior to entering the HBCUs and where they are now in that particular juncture that survey instrument is implemented. We can also look at data from the National Survey of Student Engagement, NSSE, to look at, again, the ways in which the institution is working to facilitate that engagement. Engagement, as we know in higher education, is a key indicator of persistence in higher education.
I'd like to add to both of that because I thank you, Dr. Bratton, for adding the qualitative portion of that because quantitative data, did they get a job? Was it a good job? What was the pay? We got all that. That's one measure of success, certainly. But what was their experience? What did the student feel like success was? I think we'd be remiss if we didn't add in that data as well to this conversation because one person's definition of success is going to be different than another's. So it's really important to look at their whole psychosocial development through this as they matriculate through the higher ed process.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. So let's go back to the larger structure, right? So each of you guys now have an opportunity that I'm sure you're going to love. You have an opportunity to speak to the president. You have an opportunity to speak to the head of the board. And you have the role or the responsibility of advising your HBCU president on 2 to 3 structural changes most likely to improve Black male success outcomes. what do you tell them? Two or three structural changes. And I appreciate that Brad has made us localize this as we have a very diverse HBCU community. So put on whatever hat, whatever HBC you're talking about, as they are all diverse. But you have an opportunity to talk to the president. What structural changes do we need to make to significantly impact Black male success?
I want to hit one first. Let me hit this one because this is one I don't think we've even spoken about, but I've been doing a lot of lit reviews for my Ph.D. myself. And one of the things, it's treating it, the Black male success as not a program, but more of an institutional strategy. To have it be really evident that the entire university community buys into the success, and the young men feel that as they go through in every interaction they have with faculty or staff.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say I think there are three factors that I would focus on. One of which is really forming better partnerships with the local K-12 systems and really working early on to expose students, particularly Black men, to the ideal of a higher education, to the ideal of HBCUs, and let them know that that is possible and they can be successful. Number two, I think there needs to be some support around providing as much financial support or financial aid or scholarships as possible. A lot of students now are really questioning the value of a higher education, particularly because this whole higher education is so expensive now. And so folks are concerned about the debt they may take on. Letting students know, particularly Black men, that number one, the institutions has financial support, and number two, that higher education will help students in ways that are really really important to their long-term life engagement. And number three, I think the institution or HBCU should invest more in Black male initiatives, right? We know that Black male initiatives will really help Black men to really be more intentional to engage in help-seeking behavior, right? So if a Black male's in a classroom and they're struggling academically, that Black male initiative will help to demystify the notion that seeking support is an issue for Black men, right? And also letting Black men know that they have a source of community. There's someone on campus who care about them, and they have other peers and scholars who are invested in their success.
Amazing. I thank you both for those. You almost stole my stuff. I love what Dr. Palmer said about pipelines. Of course, if I had three, it would definitely be the development of pipelines, and that comes from building strong relationships with the K through 12 system, as well as other civic organizations and nonprofit organizations, but the intentional and strategic development of a Black male pipeline that's multifaceted and multi-dimensional. I would also give some kind of voice to the power of high touch, high impact living learning communities. I because my roots shout out to the Car STEM Scholars Program and H3SP. Those are programs that we have here on campus that really show the power and the impact of living learning communities that are done well. And so I think a Black male living learning community that does start with the Summer Bridge program and starts with all of these other structural realities that we know to be successful for all students, and shaping it and coloring it for the Black male experience. And then the third, I would definitely advise the board or advise the president about a Black male student organization umbrella. And these are all things that we've talked about before, gentlemen. But the fact that we have many Black men's organizations on campus that students are involved in, whether it is Divine Nine, whether it's other selective orgs, whether it's community service, there are Black men's organizations that exist on campus, but having a centralized umbrella that is supported by the university, not just its own thing, but that the university understands, this is so important that we want to make sure that there's a unified body or unified entity that's able to collaborate and work together and pool resources in order to move forward the ideas of Black men's success. So absolutely a living learning community, stronger pipelines, and an umbrella organization would be three things that I would lay out for a president or for a board.
I didn't get the assignment right. I thought it was three between the three of us. Let me add one. I'm a social worker, so I got to talk about mental health and wellness. We have to normalize it, and especially in our community. We have to make wellness more masculine and communal and culturally relevant. We shouldn't expect people to come in on a self referral. And when we see something going on, we need to make sure that they feel communal and that we build a sense of community and brotherhood, and we can talk, no cap zone. We can all talk and be honest and relevant with what's going on, and that's stuff that really matters.
Absolutely. Well, I'm smiling ear to ear because many of the things that you guys are speaking about are things that we've actually put in front of the president and the board. I'm really excited to be developing out, hopefully, a number of institutional supports for the young men that come on campus here. Dr. Palmer, you brought up something that I think is really important. It's not in my list here, but I think I want to go off script for 30 seconds. You talked about the importance of building out the pipeline and essentially convincing young Black men that college is a viable option. You guys hear about it frequently. AI is coming to change the world. It was already tough to get brothers to identify college as a viable option long before AI. And we'll also say, right, I've been in higher level administration for a while. College is more expensive today than it's ever been, and unfortunately, it's looking unsustainable. So, and you, any of you guys can answer this, or all of you, if you feel so inclined. But how do we convince that young man who is in high school that college is still a viable option for tomorrow? AI is going to change many of the fields. Many of our first year graduates don't have jobs in the same way they did anymore. I think debt is piling up for them. And many young men who are saying, hey, that college experience sounds nice, the experience, but I don't want to go into debt in order to identify this. What do you say to that young man? How do you convince him that college is the right option? And is it the right option as we're sitting here as responsible citizens?
Convince them to use AI to find a career path that's going to get them unremoved from AI, basically. AI proof themselves. I mean, teach them about the tech. Don't be scared of it in that one example. That's one thing I'm telling all my students. Learn how to use it effectively. But more to your point, find your passion and identify if an academic institution can realize your passion. That's what you're going to remain committed to. The choices you make are based on the direction you want to go in. And if you don't have a clear direction, you got to paint that picture. So by going on high school campuses, they see the looking glass self, they see professional men, they see potential opportunities in areas they may not have even thought of as viable career spots that may not be affected by AI. So it's information.
I would say also really encouraging Black men or students in general to really invest in or believe in this notion of delayed gratification. And when you go to colleges, you're making an investment, and oftentimes that investment will not pay off instantly. It's going to take some time, but really in convincing them, helping them understand that eventually, over time, that investment will pay off, right? And I think AI can be used in a way where students can help discover their passion, right? They can help discover what they want to do in college and really kind of help act as a supplement to help them understand how college life or the college experience can really be of a long-term benefit to them and their family. And also thinking too about the whole notion that knowledge is power, right? So AI is just something that you can type in to get resources and get answers, but are you really empowered? When I think about education, I'm often attracted to the reason why Frederick Douglass was attracted to education, because knowledge is power. So really teaching Black men in particular to be empowered. We still live in a very racist society, obviously. And one of the things that we can do to help challenge or at least help combat that racism is be empowered through education.
Thank you. I think Dr. Palmer, you said it so beautifully. And I think one of the things to also consider for those of us who have had the honor to get to be in a course like the history of higher education, under the great Dr. Melanie Carter, I am a devotee and disciple, absolutely, hands down, always and forever. because that class changed my life because it forced me to sit with a very fundamental question that our society has not answered well, and that is, what is the purpose? What is the purpose of higher ed? And I think you're speaking to that, Dr. Palmer, really well. What is the purpose of higher ed? What is the purpose of college? Because if this is simply about the transaction of your money for credentials, then okay, that can be done a myriad of ways. But when you understand the purpose of college as bigger and deeper and more profound than just, getting credentials to get a job to land in a certain economic level, then I think that's where young men can really begin to understand, okay, college is worth it because it's more than just the degree to get the job. This is about my formation. This is about building networks. This is about building characters, about self-discovery. It's about joy. This is about joy for Black men who have to navigate many things in this world, to have a space where joy matters and joy is something that is important and is not divorced from intellectual rigor or intellectual seriousness. Rather, like it can coexist. I think having the conversation about the purpose of college for Black men even would be an amazing starting point for what you're speaking of, Dr. Hadley.
Wonderful. I can use this stuff as we recruit our high school students during our Kings of Campus. So let's talk a little bit about the students that come and how the institutions are ultimately supporting them and what's working, what is right, what's working. So Black male students arrive at HBCUs carrying real weight, from under-resourced K through 12 pipelines to generational trauma to societal messages about who they are. How are our institutions accounting for what students bring with them, not just what they encounter once they arrive?
Mm. I think I would love to start this in considering our, once again, institutional characteristics matter. Because if you have a young man that's, coming from whatever world he's coming from into a giant R1 HBCU, that's very different than that young man going into a smaller liberal arts college. And so I think that's kind of where some of the difference lies, because when you are, for instance, Howard, we are the only R1 HBCU, and being R1 comes with its own nature and characteristics, and being an HBCU comes with its own nature and characteristics, being large and urban and all of these things. And so I think that institutionally, there has to be intentionality. And I think, if I'm going to be honest, it's a little more difficult for larger research institutions because of the nature of our enterprise. And so I would say that there are many large R1 institutions, and then at Howard as well, that are accounting for it. But could it be more strategic? I think absolutely. And we see many ways and opportunities, much like the question you asked previous about what would we suggest to leadership about ways to structurally impact. I think that speaks to some of the areas where we see some of the lack, whether it's in our institution or other institutions that we've had a chance to be a part of.
Yeah, I would just add to that I think institutions, HBCUs or institutions in general, should invest more in summer bridge programs, knowing that students are coming from K-12 with some academic skill sets that may be lacking or may be in need of improvement. So connecting students to an experience for 6 weeks prior to actually matriculating for the fall semester. And during those 6 weeks, students can take courses in reading, math, and writing, and they can be exposed to mentors. They can be exposed to college experience, right? They can also be exposed to resources that will help them finance their degree. And then once they matriculate, having students, Black men in particular, having them connected to a support system, that support system can be a peer mentor. That peer mentor can be an upperclassman or a faculty person, right? That support system can also be a Black male initiative on campus where students have a rich community of like-minded folks, and having someone who serves as the director of that Black male initiative to exercise an ethic of care, to really help normalize that help-seeking behavior and really provide a source of community that help that student thrive and to help that student um, um, uh, access resources for problems that they may be facing on campus.
If I may, since I run one of those Black male initiatives, and one of the things that we found is early intervention. So doing an assessment to find out what baggage they're bringing in, what are their obstacles perceived by themselves, identify them earlier and connecting them to those university resources. High touch coaching, stay involved, be accountable, be their accountability partner, and making sure that the sense of community is felt. Otherwise, they maintain isolation. They don't necessarily, guys don't seek out information unless it's readily available and in their face. They don't want to look silly. That's what I hear from some of the guys when we speak. Why don't you just ask? I didn't want to be the only one who didn't know. I said, I promise you, you're not. So we definitely need to let them feel comfortable expressing themselves and not belittle them into thinking, because that just fosters the whole stereotype of guys should know, man up. No, you should know this stuff. No, there's a place to go and they don't know. It's their first time in college. Just help them find it. Be supportive.
Yeah, thank you. No, go ahead, Dr. Palmer. Uh-oh.
The Black male initiatives, and I think that's important. But it's also important that those Black male initiatives will be assessed. Oftentimes we think that something is working, but we don't have data to speak to it. And that really happens a lot on college campuses. A lot of institutions have Black male initiatives, but there's no form of assessment. So it's really important that there's some intentionality to really assess what's working and what can be improved to help improve outcomes and experience overall for Black men on campus.
That's perfect. So I appreciate both of you guys, because that leads directly to the next question, which Nick may be able to give us some guidance on. But what specific programs, interventions, or institutional designs have you seen actually move the needle on persistence and completion for Black men at HBCUs? What makes them sustainable? What does that look like?
Outside of financial sustainability, because that one I can't obviously answer, but if you have the evidence-based outcomes, I think universities would be remiss if they didn't follow that data to invest more into the initiative. But it's a labor-intensive thing. It's time spent with them. What I found to be really effective, again, is speaking to them on a regular basis, having them know what's coming up and what's coming down the pike that will specifically address why they came here to the university, letting them feel comfortable asking questions and giving them the tools to show where to find them themselves. A lot of times they don't have I don't ever try to be a parental unit. I give them an UNC vibe. I'm the guy you can talk to that you don't want to talk to your parents about stuff. And that's either personal stuff or, hey, I screwed up. How do I get out of this? What's a real way to get through this? They don't have that touch. They don't have that connection. And that was what I found to be the most important. So if I were to design a program, I would make a high touch advising platform with mentor involvement, cohort models, all of that to build them a sense of community. Like Dr. Bratton said, living learning communities, all of that helps. And that's taken from a bunch of different literature sources.
I think thinking about the institutional realities with all of this, I honestly, just from what I've researched and what I've experienced, I think that we're actually in the early stages of universities responding to this. And so I'm not sure if we have too many, examples that already exist and that have lasted a long time and have shown. Maybe Dr. Palmer knows of some, but one of the things I sit and think about is the fact that one of the questions that we've wrestled with here in the College of Arts and Sciences is this fundamental question of what is it that Black men need that they don't have that everybody else has. And I think that is because I think some of the tension with institutions lies in the fact that the data currently is showing lower retention rates, lower graduation rates, and that's been happening for I don't know for a while. But I think that really truly being convinced that there is something that distinctly needs to happen distinctly for Black men on college campuses. I think that many institutions are still trying not to just respond to the moment, like you cited the New York Times article, and this is all of the buzz now, right? But is it really seen and understood as a deep and systemic problem? I'm not certain how many institutions are truly convinced and have taken the actions necessary. Once that's been settled for an institution, then I think that actions are going to follow. But we see broad access institutions that have increased their number of male students to where it's almost a 50-50 with the male-female ratio of just getting them in the door. And we're waiting now to see what do their graduation rates and their retention rates and whatnot look like as they've increased their students that are their Black male students that are enrolling. So I think that the jury is still out for some institutions about whether or not this is actually a systemic problem. Hence, the response is all over the place, I think.
Yeah, I would make the case that, there is evidence to understand what is working to move the needle for a Black male success. I mean, if you read the literature, we kind of, researchers tend to say the same thing over and over, right? We talk about, for example, mentoring programs. We talk about Black male initiatives. We talk about financial support. We talk about programs to help Black men use their masculinities in such a way where it's going to be conducive to academic success. So there's so much information out there. This whole notion of working to improve Black male persistence and access is not anything new. It's not a new conversation. We've been really intentionally having these conversations within the last 20, 25 years or so. I think the issue is how can universities adopt what's out there to really be intentional to promote success for Black men, right? For example, one of the things that we know is that oftentimes because Black men in particular feel as though they have to be the breadwinner in some cases for their family, they may be working two jobs and going to school full time. So how can institutions design a program to really help Black men navigate that dynamic? It's really difficult when you're trying to focus on taking care of your family, but also be engaged academically. That's a challenge, right? Or you have your community, for example, folks at home who are making it seem like that your investment in higher education as a Black man is a waste of time. Or maybe you're ridiculed for, acting white or being perceived as trying to be different, or trying to be better. There's so many dynamics. But we do have literature out there and data out there. We just have to be more intentional to use that data.
One of the things, real quick to add to that, and I thank you for that, Dr. Palmer. I think one of the things that I've discovered here in diving into this work here, a lot of the things that we see as hurdles and barriers for Black men, Black women also experience, right? So there are Black women who are coming to college and they're working two jobs and they're supposed to be the breadwinner. And so all of the many of the things that we've attributed to Black men, also there are large numbers of Black women who are saying the same thing. And so I think, or I wonder if that has been a part of institutional, I'll say, gridlock in the, because yes, the conversation's been happening for decades now. Action, like sustainable, and I think this was the key word that Dr. Hadley used that I took note of: sustainable action, systemic changes. For this, I think that's where I've seen some of the, you know, I've just seen a little bit of back and forth on that, or haven't seen as much action that has been sustainable. Though the literature has been out there, the conversation has been rich. Because, and I would, like I said, I would imagine, or I would wonder if, the fact that Black women also experience these same things, and we've not seen the distinction. What is it about Black men versus Black women that make having a specific Black male initiative so important? And I think that's where the conversation will get very, very important, very critical, and I think it would yield some really great results for everyone.
Anecdotally, the girls are more engaged. I see, at least in the School of B, they're more likely to seek out information if they're unsure. So it's making the guys feel comfortable that they can ask and not be ridiculed for doing so. It goes to that redefining masculinity and being real firm about what's okay to not be okay. It's okay to get it wrong. We're here to help you. So let's get them engaged, and they'll do much better. Anecdotally, of course. I'm not writing my write-up.
Very rich conversation, and that's really, to be clear, we could have a whole discussion just about, I think, that topic in and of itself, and it is something that I think needs to be addressed as we think about doing this work effectively. Have two quick questions, and then I'm going to get to the audience on my side as I close things out on my end. One might lend itself to some controversy. Where do you see HBCUs, perhaps unintentionally, replicating the same deficit frameworks that PWIs use when thinking about Black men? And it may not replicate those same concepts, but I figured I'd give you a space here.
I would say ignoring. Ignore, like, this is almost the invisibility that comes with intersectional. All of us who have studied intersectionality understand that the whole premise of intersectionality that comes from Black feminist thought is the idea that the intersection of being a woman and being Black renders you invisible oftentimes. And I would say in a PWI context, that could easily be the same. And in HBCU context, could easily adopt that as well. So that's the first thought that comes to my mind. We could ignore them the same way that PWIs ignore the population.
Yeah, I think to build off of that, what Dr. Bratton said, thinking about the notion of if they don't come to campus, we're not going to be intentional to seek them out. We're not going to be intentional to build partnerships with school districts and programs. We're not going to design programs to understand the unique needs of Black men. So if they don't, if the Black males or Black men do not make a concerted effort, we're not going to reach out to enroll them and try to retain them once they're enrolled in college.
Yeah.
This is more anecdotal, but race gendered stereotypes, even with dealing with faculty and staff. The staff have, and we have to be real careful in expecting more from males than we do our female students. Not that the females aren't performing without that. It's not like there's a curve on the performance matrix, but having the posture that the guys should be. Manny, and I've witnessed some of it in some instances, the expectation from faculty and staff is that, the guys should have been paying more attention. The girls seem to get it right the first time. And they may not have even mentioned it, but it's just a culture of gendered stereotypes that needs to go away.
I appreciate it. So I'm going to reserve my last question. We have lots of questions from the audience that I want to try to get to some of them here. What role do HBCUs play as stakeholders in this conversation of K through 12 pipeline, especially in districts that are taking over and instruction on these NES campuses mimics penitentiaries? What role do HBCUs play in this as stakeholders in the K through 12 pipeline? And if you guys can answer that if you have something, and if not, I do have questions here for each of you guys, so don't feel free just to answer every question.
I think Dr. Palmer said it earlier that, and I want to reinforce it. We have to be proactive in going after these partnerships and not just waiting for them to come to us. We have to see their value, because there is a divide oftentimes in the educational landscape between the K through 12 folks and the higher ed folks. But HBCU's role, I believe we should be the ones leading the conversation, leading the action, wanting to connect in whatever way that that looks best for both institutions. But I definitely see us as the proactive leaders of this pipeline development with the K through 12 world.
And one thing the School of Business does here at Howard is we have a summer enrichment program that exposes rising juniors and seniors to HBCU life and various careers in the School of Business. So early intervention and letting them see themselves in spaces that they may not have ever visualized themselves being in. And we start by getting our foot in the door through mentorship programs with the younger men in those K through 12 spaces.
Absolutely. Next question here. Dr. Bratton talked a lot about having things distinctly for Black men. Dr. Hadley, what is unique about Howard's program? Or anybody can answer. Also, Dr. Hadley, can you share about activities planned last week for Black men? So I will just quickly say, so many of the gentlemen on this call, I think all of them in some capacity have been involved in the work that we're doing here on campus. We've been working with our students on campus to really work through figuring out supports for them with retention and matriculation, as well as working to build out the pipeline, working with the K through 12 institutions. Within the past week, we had a Kings of Campus ceremony for Prince George's County Schools, public schools. So we had 100 middle school and high school boys on campus to do what Dr. Palmer mentioned earlier and really work to build out that pipeline, help them see themselves on campus and have our students put on programming and hopefully not only recruit them, but make them feel seen and valuable in this space. And then we had a big one last Thursday, the day before Accepted Students Day. We put on our inaugural Kings of Campus for admitted male students. So we had 200 young men who have been admitted into the institution or accepted into the institution. We put on a full day to really do our best to convert them from admitted to enrolled, to, of course, build out that pipeline a little bit more, but ultimately help them again understand they're wanted, valued, and that we have a number of resources here on campus for them. And we'll continue to do that work throughout the year. We do that as well as a number of other programs, as well as working with Dr. Bratton and team to build out an LLC. And so I will utilize that because another question for you, Dr. Bratton, is, Dr. Bratton, please describe more on the Living Learning Lab. So I'll let you take that over.
I'll just super quickly, living learning communities really are intentional communities that are built in a holistic fashion to cultivate student success. You're talking about a student development model that's beyond just student affairs, that's beyond just the basic things. This is about a whole life experience. And so a living learning community, you live with in the same residence hall, the same floors. You live with those who have decided that they want to take this journey together and they are committed to building out whatever a successful community looks like for that institution. So a living learning community really is just an intentional group of people that have committed to walking out these 4 years or however long they will be in the institution together, academically, socially, spiritually, psychologically, emotionally. They have decided to journey together. And that, in a very quick summation, is the essence of a good living learning community.
Thank you. And Dr. Bratton is lend his expertise to help us build out our pilot iteration of a LLC for this incoming freshman class. We were able to introduce that to them last week at the inaugural Kings of Campus event, and students seem to be excited about the opportunity to join that. Dr. Palmer, would you share more practical solutions based on the extensive research you've done?
That's in relationship to retaining Black men, or question's kind of vague?
I think that's going to allow you to take that in whatever direction you want. That's all the information I have here via question.
Again, there is, a wealth of information out there in terms of what institutions can do and to help increase success for Black men. And now we talk about, using an anti-deficit approach. So finding what's working, right? Not focusing on what isn't working. That's a deficit perspective. but focusing on what is working to really um, help to increase success for Black men. So looking at programs, policies, there's so much information out there. And I think that's one of the ways in which AI can be helpful, and really kind of using the AI to kind of surf through the literature to find out what may be working, what are best policies and practices. But there's so much out there to really engage and support Black men. But we do know that student engagement is really important. So really engaging students, particularly Black men, in educational purposeful activities, right, that help them become connected academically and socially to the campus is important as well.
Yeah. And I think to that point, one of the things that we typically pride ourselves on in the HBCU environment is developing a sense of belonging or really being beneficial to our students in that space. And we talk about this frequently in our meetings, but today's student has been significantly impacted by the pandemic as well as social media. I think for those of you that are not aware, the freshman class of this year missed out most of their 7th and 8th grade year, and next year's freshmen missed out most of their 6th and 7th grade. And we know that those periods in a child's life are in neurological development have a significant impact on psychosocial development, social development, and we're finding that a number of our students are coming in, I think, in need of additional assistance in terms of building relationships, maintaining relationships, and maneuvering through that space. And so I think we're doing a great deal as an institution to learn how to meet this student where they are and figure out how to best serve them today. Mr. Gabriel, how often do you meet with the young man, and why is this housed in a school of business? Do other schools on campus have the same program?
Meet with the students initially, early intervention, try to do it before October of each incoming year. So I spend time, do a 30-minute assessment, kind of find out who they are. Then I leave it up to them. Yeah, I believe everything. I use choice theory throughout my dissertation. I believe that, if you want to do something, you can do it. I just got to let you come up with your choices and see that you enact them. So it varies. Some students I meet with weekly, some I meet with biweekly, some I meet with monthly. All depends on what they're trying to get out of the relationship. But I stay in front of them all the time, and I walk around the building, and they see me, so they'll stop me in the hallway. It's a connection that I've made with the students at large. And answer your question, why it's in the School of B. Well, the Executive Leadership Council funded an initial pilot of this program for a YLMI, You Lead Male Initiative, and it was to be housed in the School of Business. But we're not greedy. We're going to share the information with the other gentlemen on the panel, and hopefully we can take this beyond the School of Business so that all of the students can have access to it.
In due time, right? In due time. This is the final one from the audience here. We say Black men are not a monolith, but in prior conversations, I recognize that both in the HBCU environment, which is prone to exposing a strict idea of Black excellence, we tend to put Black men into a box of what success should look like. How do we make both K through 12 students and HBCU students aware of the different forms of success that exist for Black men?
I think that question is best understood, and I think it's a great question if I understand that correctly. I think really understanding what is this fundamental question of success for Black men. Does success for Black men look different than success for other men or other women or whoever? Is it about redefining or reimagining success for Black men, or is it just reimagining concepts of success? So I think that is fundamentally what has to be grappled with, because once again, we have to make sure that whatever we are doing is not to the punishment of Black women. Black women have been working hard over these last few decades, and they've made great gains. And we have called that successful by some measure. So whatever we do, we have to make sure that it's not to the detriment of Black women. It's not to the detriment of their success, and it's no way seen as a punishment or anything along those lines. So I think the general conversation around success itself as a concept is worth conversing about.
adding on to that and finding out how the student measures success. Their input is key. That's where the motivation comes from.
Well, good, gentlemen. Well, thank you guys. I have had an honor in participating in this panel with you guys. I think we've learned a lot. I'm really excited to say that at the institution, we are implementing a great deal of what you guys discussed in this conversation. And as you guys know that because I get a chance to consult with you guys frequently, we are really doing our best to meet the students where they are, to build out a bevy of resources, tools, opportunities, and experiences that will elevate them on their journey and ensure that when they graduate, and when they graduate, they're leaving here a lot better than they joined in. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. And I will turn the conversation over to my colleague.
Real quick, I'm sorry, super quick. I have to give a shout out to the Flagship Society. We have a group of about 6 young men in the College of Arts and Sciences that are committed to building community amongst men within the College of Arts and Sciences, and they've been working diligently all year long. And I must give a shout out to what they're trying to make happen and how I get to support them in that. I just wanted to make sure I did that. I'm sorry.
Wonderful. No, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. This has been a very rich conversation. I learned so much, and I'm so excited about all the great things that you all are working on and that we're doing at the university. So thank you so much, Dr. Hadley and Dr. Bratton, Dr. Palmer, and Mr. Gabriel, soon to be Dr. Gabriel, I hear. Okay, so thank you all so much. And again, this has been a great conversation, and we look forward to having you back with some other center programming. We need to have a special webinar or session devoted specifically to this, and maybe we can include some of the students and others who are involved in these great programs. So again, thank you so much, and invite you to continue to enjoy the conference. Our next sessions will focus specifically on our HBCU Research Network Fellows, of which Dr. Bratton was one. He was a member of our first cohort, so he knows what this is all about. But certainly they'll be presenting their research that they've conducted during this year of their fellow award. Okay, so again, thank you all so much, and you all have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Hadley.